It's still only me.
It will be archived.
It will be archived. You look sharp, Kai.
I try, I try.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. Hi, Kai. Alcé.
Hello.
Fresh off your set from last night at Public Records.
Yes, yes. Had a really good
Welcome
time.
to Brooklyn again.
BK.
Yeah. How you feeling today on
Good.
a rainy?
Rainy day in New York. Yeah, but no problems.
Yeah. I was wondering, you're born and raised here
Yes.
in New York. You moved to different places since then, obviously. But how does it feel for you to come back to your hometown whenever you come back?
It kind of feels like a second home always, because I still have relatives here. I've always had friends, and I'm always here at least, I say about 3 to 4 times a year. Always. I used to still spend longer times back when I used to come like in the '90s. I would spend like maybe 2 weeks a week. Now I don't think maybe I'm here 4 or 5 days at tops.
And then you had enough, and then you
Just go
leave
back.
again.
Yeah, yeah. New York can have a tendency to wear you out quickly, especially if you're trying to do everything.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I might be skipping facts, and I know you repeated the story how you grew up, where you grew up, many times before.
Yes.
And if I have my facts and my dates correct,
Yes.
if I did my research correct, your family moved to Detroit from New York in the 1980
Yep.
or early 80s.
Yeah, so I spent about 10 years in New York, about 10 years in Detroit, and now I've been about 20 years plus in Atlanta.
In Atlanta. So I'm wondering how for people like me who know the Detroit of now and
Yes.
like heard of Detroit from back then, how can we imagine Detroit in the 80s when you moved there as a kid? And also then how did you find your way into the music scene and connect with people?
So I remember when we moved from New York to Detroit, I was like, Detroit, what is that? Like my mom had to show it to us on a map. We were like, yeah, we don't want to move to Detroit, but we moved and I kind of integrated pretty easily, wasn't that bad. Um, it was actually my sister who, you know, just by her friends and hanging out, I end up. My mother had this weird idea that if send your little brother with my sister, it'll keep her out of trouble. But I guess it just opened up the door for me to get into trouble. I guess, um, and so through that, I just ended up being at these house parties, that the high schoolers were then throwing, and then by the time by the time I was like a freshman in high school, she was a senior in high school, so she was leaving. And so then by the time she was gone, I just continued on the party thing. And then I ran into, I guess I really got into it when I met Shay and started going to the Music Institute. And by the way of that, I kind of met everyone, from Alton to Juan and Kevin to Derek, and uh, Techno Corner, I guess is what they call it now, where Transmat One. I would just hang out at KMS all the time because Shay was the A&R there. So I was privy to just kind of seeing how things came about. And yeah, and it just stayed with me for ever since then. Yeah.
I can imagine, like you said, you were a teenager at that time.
Teenager.
Were there any, and you mentioned in other interviews that your father was like a hi-fi guy, very into jazz.
Yeah.
So based on that, music was always like played a role in your household?
Always. So when we're here in New York, definitely like when they would have parties and they would have tons of parties, I was kind of like the one that would have to flip the record, or he had a reel to reel, so I knew how to put the reel to reel on. So if the reel to reel ended, I was the first one to go and put it back on, keep the party going. That was like the kind of person, and just kind of stuck with me. Definitely the idea of hi-fi sound and jazz, I got from him definitely. And then my mother was more into like the soca and compa because both my parents are Haitian, so I grew up within that culture, but within New York.
So based on that, like I said, music being a part, but you then, like you said, you hung out at KMS all the time. Was there any? I guess that was just what you did, but was there any like bigger thought of like, this is what I want to do forever? Or because I know you went to school for something else.
Yes.
Eventually.
Yes.
But if you put yourself back then, at that time?
I mean, I really just wanted. I kind of wanted to DJ, but um, I didn't see it as like a profession because back then there were no models, back then to say like, oh, you could be a DJ for the rest of your life and pay bills and have a house or whatever else. There were no examples of that. Those people were coming of age then. From Derek to even here in New York. The Larry, like, yeah, people knew Larry Levan, but people might want to be the DJ, but did people really see it as like, oh, I can make that as a profession, start from 17 and do it till the end.
Right.
Like you didn't really have that, so, but now totally, we got tons of examples. So I never saw yes as a profession. I just saw it as something I really wanted to do. And yeah, it just kind of stuck with me, then when I moved to Atlanta, um, yeah, there just wasn't a lot of house music down there, first of all. And then the two people that were kind of like DJing there the most were Ted Patterson and Ron Pullman. And they both kind of left one year, like maybe 92 or something like that. And I just found myself like, okay, if I don't get in here and like play some house music, there won't be any house music here. And, then I used my connections from Detroit. Yeah, here we are.
Did you you said you wanted to DJ? Like, did you start DJing in Detroit already, or like when you then went to school
I
in?
did start DJing, so I did a couple like high school parties. I would play a couple records with Shay at Music Institute at times, but I didn't really gnaw my teeth as like being the DJ while I was in Detroit. More so once I got to Atlanta. So people knew me for music in Detroit because I was a guy that I guess played the house music. I would invite my friends to Music Institute and stuff like that. So they knew I was like the house guy. But DJing, I think once I kind of got my name or whatever for DJing was more so once I got to Atlanta.
Okay. Did you play while you went to school?
I did. And not unbeknownst to my parents. I remember when I went, I think I was trying to like bring like all my records and I had turntables and whatnot. And they were like, "Oh no," But I think I snuck a turntable, or maybe I got one. When I was here. I had like a Cradle Records, and you really couldn't have that like in your dorm room. But I remember having like an amp hidden in my closet and speakers that were like in the closet we would pull out every now and then, like on the weekend and bang it. So, then I started to throw a couple little parties like on campus. And then again, I think once by that time, like my second sophomore year, so was when Ron Pullman and Ted Patterson kind of moved, and so I just kind of like found myself just either throwing parties, and then a guy from Detroit, his name was Philip, who owned a place called Tracks, which was like the biggest skate club in Atlanta at the time. He saw me at some house party and was like, "Yo, I want you to come play at my club." I was like, "All right, cool." Started playing there, and there was like another place where these guys would, they were called Madhouse, and they kind of played more of the, I guess, what would now be the progressive sound. They played like Sasha and Digweed and that kind of music. But I was all into like maybe Junior Vasquez and Masters of Work, so I would come sometimes and play with them at their party. So in between there and Tracks, college. That ended up being my base in Atlanta.
Um, you just said you were the house guy, or that's how people saw you.
Yes.
Do people still? I mean, at that point, it's a whole different scenario, because you and a bunch of like DJ Kemet and Ramon, you like the staple in Atlanta. But I'm wondering at that time. You again, if I did my research correctly, you went to school for psychology.
Correct, Morehouse.
Was that something that you, again, you said at that time there was no roadmap to being the professional DJ, maybe yet. But what is it? Did you wanted to pursue psychology, or like did the studies in psychology ever come in handy while being a DJ?
It does. It's really hard to put in words, but you can kind of just use it like even just like when I kind of Like some people just want to like play music banging all night. Like yeah, you can't bang people all night because they have X amount of energy. So you have to figure a way to kind of weave that in and out. You can let them get a drink. You don't. Yes, you want to keep people on the dance floor all night, but at the same time, you're like you want to know that there's different moods and times of the night, and I think that's where psychology helped me, and especially. And then when I was throwing parties, you think of psychology as far as like when people are getting paid, when they got money, like they're like so back then because we were doing residencies that were weekly, so a lot of times you could tell like oh this week is not gonna be that great because people got to pay bills, or you'll know oh people just got paid, it's gonna be good. So there's little small nuances like that yes psychology helps. Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting. And then at one point, did you come? I know this is like a very broad, and I'm skipping all the years, right? But my question, or my thought is, when you've been DJing for a while, at what point, what was the deciding factor for you to be like, I want to make my own music, and maybe not consciously like I want to be a producer, but also like make music instead of only playing it. If that makes sense.
Probably started when in the maybe late '90s, because so I was around when Shay and Ron were producing, their classic, stuff, and I kind of remember just being in the studio, but not necessarily being like I want to do that. It wasn't until later then, when I was DJing a lot more, and then I started, kind of like, oh, I wish this track did this, or maybe if this track was longer, so then I was like, well, maybe I think maybe I wanted to like get more into remixing or rearranging. That was my first initial kind of like thoughts of producing, I guess. And then, yeah, it just got to a point where, maybe some other people started making music. I was like, I like that. And I think if I got into making music, I would do that. And yeah, I started off with an MPC and I had a Juno keyboard. And the rest is history, right?
Did you I mentioned, and you said like it come from a very musical family, but like did you have I guess as it's called training in like music theory, or did you play an instrument before? Not to say that this is a necessity, but I'm always interested in who has and who doesn't and still makes dope music.
I know no training per se. I wish I would have had an uncle who was a classical pianist, like could play. And I think I would watch him and listen, but never wanted to never necessarily learn. I think I picked up the trumpet for a little while. But no, so my musical training is just my ear, just hearing, yeah, by ear, yeah.
How was you said you picked up an MPC and a
And a Juno
Juno.
106, yes.
How
Yeah.
was that? And based on the fact that you've already been around,
Yes.
major producers, but what was the learning curve like? But also, there was no YouTube. And did you call your friends, aka Ron Trent or Shay, and be like, "How do you do this?" Or what?
So when I bought the MP, I kind of played with it a lot, just on my own, and then I guess at that time I was playing at MJQ, and yes, I was bringing many of my friends, from Ron and Theo, whoever, and I think everyone who came in town, I would just kind of learn a little something from each person, because I would maybe be doing something, and they would be like, well, if you do this, you can do this, and yeah, over the years you just learn more and more from everyone. And like Sinbad, I think Sinbad was a person that taught me how to like time stretch vocals. Um, Ron might have helped me with like maybe some sequencing, things like that. Shay, we would kind of always just kind of play with music together. So yeah, it was. Yeah, I think with that, just my own learning, and then everybody that kind of came through, kind of, either gave me a pointer or you just learned something by watching how they did. Yes.
And what was the point where you said, when did you make something that where you're like, I think that's pretty decent for yourself, and then we're like, I think I want to put this out, however, in whatever shape or form.
So I started to make a bunch of tracks, and my very good friend Brett Dancer, who owned Track Mode at the time, I would always send him stuff, and I think finally I sent him something, and he was like, I like this one. he's like, give me, some other ones, which was Power Through. And from that point on, like, yeah, and usually by that time, I may have had like about 10, 15 tracks that I thought like, okay, I think these are good enough, and when he took that one, there were already some other ones on there that I needed maybe just to finish off or whatever. Um, yeah, so once, cause I kind of knew that I never wanted to put something out and then something like it hits and then like feel like I got pressed to make something quickly afterward. I wanted to have some sort of bang of music. So if people did, I'd have music to regularly put out and kind of be a little ahead of myself. But yeah, that was probably the first, and then I think right after that, I think Kenny put out something for me on Mahogany Music. And then after that, I think that was when I started to really concentrate on trying to start in the ATL.
Let's skip my question here and jump to that
Okay.
in the ATL to your label. I forgot I had a microphone. So obviously the name in the ATL is a combination of like the cities that you lived in, you come from, all the influences that you brought.
Correct. So it's the ATL, New York, Detroit, Atlanta, 3 places where I've lived and heavily influenced me.
Right.
Without Chicago. Chicago would be the other one, but I never lived in Chicago.
Okay, but the Detroit Chicago connection is pretty strong.
Undeniable. I mean, so back then, because Shay was a little older, when I would travel back to Chicago a lot with him to see. So I was privy to going to Music Box and seeing Lil Louis and going to these kind of places in Chicago, which just the combination of that, which I try to explain to some people, was I was very privy by being able to see, places like Music Box and these in Chicago, seeing places in New York like The World and Sound Factory and la la la. Because rarely, so people in New York, they never really travel anywhere. They were in New York, so people compare, they don't know about Music Box in Chicago. Yeah, there might have been some Chicago people who might have went to New York, yes, but they might have not went to Detroit. So being able to, or just by her circumstance, seeing things that were going on in Chicago, New York, I have friends, that once I got to school, going to DC, I got to see so many different roots of house music, I guess, or dance music, and so many different little places that I don't think many people got to see, during that time. Because again, most of the time, again, New Yorkers, there was no reason to go anywhere. Chicago people, they just didn't travel as much, so they just enjoyed what was there. And then Detroit, no one comes to Detroit. You know what I'm saying? Like it would, Detroit is, I say, probably the smallest city that no one's ever been, but everybody knows the city. So, everybody knows it from Motown. Everybody knows it for cars. Everybody knows it from techno. But you're like, when you visit America, did you go see Detroit? Go. So it's just a different dynamic that I was able to catch that I don't think many other people were able to catch.
Which now that you explained it that way, I think this is what makes in the ATL such a unique label in that sense. Mm-hmm. What exactly, you spoke a little bit about it, but what made you start your own label rather than continue to sending your tracks, which based on your history, you knew a lot of people already, yes. And rather than continue sending tracks to people that at different labels, now focusing on creating your own?
Well, you kind of get sick of I don't want to say sick, but just that idea of sending and wanting approval from someone else about your. So if I felt confident enough about it, I was like, why not put your own money behind it? Yeah, that was really the just the thoughts behind it. Like, if I really felt that was that good to be out, then why not put it out yourself?
What year exactly did you
I think we started 2008.
2008. Oh, okay. What were some of the 2000? Yeah. It still was different than Bandcamp wasn't around at that time. What were some of the challenges for you personally to, I guess, starting a business is not always easy, and to like run it, and especially when it comes to like making music and pressing records and doing all the
Yeah.
things.
So the fortunate part was that I worked at Satellite for some years, so I knew the distributors and I knew some of the
Okay.
people behind the scenes. But also during that time was when MP3s and everything started to kind of really kill the market. So I got in the market really when it was at kind of at its lowest, but I also didn't have high expectations. I was just like, if I can just sell this many records, I'll be good. I kind of like calculated it out. I was like, yo, if I sell this, I'll make my money back. I'll have enough money to invest in the next record. I did the first record, sold them all. And what was so funny is like one of the distributors, and we won't mention their name, but like, and somebody that I dealt with for years, at working at Satellite. And when I did my own record, like they didn't pick it up. I was like, are you serious? I was like, you're not gonna get any of them, and they didn't. Then maybe another distributor bought like a good hunk of them, and they sold them. And then after that, then that distributor ended up calling me back, like, you have any more of that record? I was like, no, I'm all sold out now. So from that point on, I kind of felt good. I was like, okay, I think I could do this, and a few more releases. Then I also knew I didn't want to become a label in which, it was always kind of just focused on me. So like people like, because I have friends like Theo and Kenny, and their labels were pretty much just their productions. Because I also felt that again gets me back on that kind of hamster wheel of like, got to make sure you got records, your tracks. So even like all those years when I was at MJQ and all the people that would come through, I always remember telling them like, I'm gonna start a label, and when I do, I'm gonna need your, whether it's a remix, a song, whatever. And everybody was cool, so I called on all those favors once I started the label.
That's dope. I wonder how, I don't know how you personally would describe your sound, right? The things that you put out. If I would, the way I would describe it, and you can, you,
I
you
can
can
shoot.
tell me,
I can shoot.
yeah, you
Shoot
can
it.
shut me down right away. It doesn't matter. But for me, it's like the perfect combination of soulful and grit. Like, there's a lot of soulful stuff, there's a lot of gritty stuff, and
Yes.
then when you put these two together, I think this is what it should sound like.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you ever had a thought or something in mind, like, I want my stuff to sound like this or that, or were you just literally, you were making stuff and see what came out? Before you had the label, but then maybe specifically once you created in the ATL, then you became a little bit more, I guess, what's the word? Concrete into what
it was.
what it
No,
was, yeah.
so even to now, I don't look. I have a hard time, like, kind of, because people will send me demos, and there's a lot of times I may like the song, but I was like, but I don't think it's from my label. Like, I'll play it, I'll support it, but do I feel like it's for the record label itself? No. And how I can, and what that is, I can never really put a finger on it, but when I started to make music, I can't say that there was a style or anything, Definitely everybody that I appreciated or admired, I just wanted to take those kind of elements and, make my own interpretation. Yeah. And and it took a little while because I'm not the greatest at keyboard work and all that kind of stuff. I ended up meeting with a blind keyboard. His name was Ricky Corey. Shouts out to Ricky. I still kick it with Ricky now, and he really helped me flesh out some of my early productions, like Feeding and what else did we do? We did a few things, and he definitely helped make sure, like, having a nice solo, or if the notes were off, he'd fix them, that kind of stuff. And then, again, you learn.
You learn by doing, I guess,
learn
and
by
go
doing. Yeah.
trial and error
Trial
as
and
we
error,
speak.
totally.
So now one thing I wanted to speak about is the topic, a little bit, the topic about mentorship.
Okay.
One of the first guests on this podcast was Stefan Ringer.
Okay, yes.
And he mentioned how he met you and how like helpful you were in like his, musical and label journey as well.
Right.
So I'm wondering, how do you see yourself as a mentor naturally, or is that something that you consciously um consciously help people, or if just somebody comes up to you and asks you for help, do you help everybody? Is there something that you look for in a person that you're not ready, or you know what I mean? In that, I
uh,
use a cliche, but
I mean, well, Shay was my mentor. Um, if I see somebody who I think has, talent, and I think they need help or they want help, I'll definitely give them. And yeah, just sometimes you see that spark or that person who just they have it, but they may not know how to, flesh it out. So yeah, like Stefan is actually his friend who came to my house to buy a record, and he came with him.
yeah, he told that. Yes, yes. Thank you for
and
remembering.
and so his friend, it wasn't until maybe like the second time they came over that his friend was like, "Oh, and my friend Stefan makes music." And I was like, "Oh, okay, why didn't you say?" He didn't say anything the first time. Anyway, he played some stuff, and I was like, "All right, it's cool." I was like, "But you may need this, you may need that," and so then that's the first time when we started working together. And then, yeah, he just had so much music, and he was always working. And I was like, "Yo, again, you can send this stuff to other people and hope that they put it out. But if you got your money and you feel that good about it, this is what you can do." And he was like, "Yeah, okay." And now he's putting out more records than I am.
Yeah, he stays busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and besides Stefan, there's other younger or like upcoming artists in Atlanta, and I'm sure you have like touched in a way that helped them. Is there something specifically that you like to pass on when people seek your
Hmm.
guidance or your advice?
Just kind of just to trust in themselves, So, Byron, when I ended up meeting Byron, uh, so he was just playing me like hip hop music, like literally, he showed up at a bar, he had his laptop and headphones, and he just was literally like just trying to get people to listen to his music. And I remember like he was talking to Carl, owner of this bar, which play I call Sound Table, and Carl was like busy, so he's like, "Hey, this kid wants you to listen to the music, listen to his music." So I was like, "All right, cool." And listen to it. And it was mostly like kind of hip hop ish stuff, but really nice chords on it. So I'm like, it's like, who did all these chords and whatnot? He's like, "Oh, that's me." And I was like, "Oh, I could really use a nice keyboardist, with like a lot of remixes that I was getting, starting to get." And so he's like, "Yeah, no problem." And that's how our journey started, and because he had never really even heard house music at that point.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
So, he comes over my house, we work on a few things. Um, and at the, while he's hearing all this or making or now with me, he's like, "Well, shoot, let me, who would you suggest, for me to listen to and stuff like that." And, I'd give him maybe a little CD or something with like all Mike Huckabee tracks or all Theo Parrish tracks or Larry Heard, whoever, and, he was a sponge. So he kind of went back, listened to him, and now, yeah, look at him now. So he's all over the place. Um, Definitely, if when I find somebody or I think somebody's got that thing, so Javant in Atlanta, Detroit. Funny was is that I had this 12-inch that he came out with on some label, defunct Detroit label, but it was a great record. And I'm like, where is this guy? Who And I think finally I asked Norm Talley, and Norm Talley's like, "Oh yeah, I know him." You know, he's all, but everybody knows him, for like yourself, a dancer. So he's a dancer.
A funny thing is, I didn't know him as a dancer. I know of the records
Okay.
until I
You went to
think a
Detroit?
year and a half ago. No, he was actually playing here with Rick.
Okay.
And he stepped from behind the keyboard and started dancing. I was like, wait a minute, what is happening?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
so everybody kind of knew him for dancing. And but Norm's like, so, when he took me over there, and and he makes music all day. He's one of these, you know, producers in the neighborhood where somebody, like, let's say somebody's parent is like, my girl can sing. They'll bring him over to his house. He'll make a track for them, and that's it. He can do this all day. And so, go over there, and I'm like, I want to put out 12-inch with you. It's like, let's, start, play me some stuff. And it took about a year or so where we just make this, take that, la la la. But put out the first 12-inch, and it was just like wildly receptive. And from that point on, now look at him. He probably put out 30 records that year. So, but that was again, his output is crazy, you know. So, yeah, there were definitely, yeah, those are all types of people. Ezel, you know, kind of speak to him all the time on the phone. Um, yeah, you know, people who I know and I feel that God didn't want, if they want the information, then yeah, I try to pass it on.
You just mentioned trust yourself. I remember you were just mentioning these words, and I wonder um how would you advise someone these days to stay true to who they are and stay true to their sound, what they're making, um given the fact that these days there's a lot of focus on social media and like kind of like attention seeking economy that goes within like whatever's happening in music, right?
Yes.
And maybe I'm putting myself in there, but there's a lot of folks who like a certain sound, who in the beginnings of making music, but it's hard to really believe in what you're doing when you have to look around and always have to be out there and put yourself out there. What would you say is the main thing that people should remember?
Focus on, let's see. Hmm. To stay, I mean, yeah, staying true is because that can. There's so many people look at it in so many different ways. I mean, again, you're in a great position because you DJ yourself. So when you're making your music, you know, just test it out. You know, that's no better way. You know, and if it works for you and works for your dance floor, then you kind of have some proof positive. You know that it'll work. You know. Um, and then and again just stay with that, you know, as it comes, you know. You know, like I saw even with Byron's had that kind of like, you know, where, you know, kind of blew up real quick, and you know he's hearing so many different sounds, he had to kind of explore them to come back to where he, you know, originally was at. And I think I think that's natural, and that's just what you have to do. You know, you have to just kind of figure out where you want to be at, you know, and stay there, or just stay true to that, you know. And hopefully, because look at Moody, man, like I feel like he's a true stayed underground, but has totally become overground. He's like on a Walmart commercial, you know what I'm saying? Like, so, but he's reaping the benefits of staying to him, staying true, you know. Um, so yeah, you just it can be hard because sometimes, you know, you may see other people moving forward, you know, above you, or seem to get more gigs or whatever. Like, you can't be concerned about that. You have to be concerned about, you know, what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. What that's my I'm wondering, what do you enjoy more, DJing, playing for people, or being at home making music? Or I don't know, at home, but wherever you're making music.
DJing, definitely.
DJing,
Yes,
yeah?
yes, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because I play records at home, like so like Stefan is more of a producer. He likes, you know, we're hanging out for a little while, and he's like, yeah, let's make a track, you know. Whereas I'll be like, oh, let's just play some records, you know. I'm more of that person. Now I'm down to make a track, of course, but yeah, usually my first social idea or whatever with music is, yeah, probably just playing it, you know. Definitely, yeah.
How do you what are some of the, because you've been playing in so many different places um for many years, what is the main, if you can name maybe one or two differences from like then how you see the dance floor now versus maybe you went to the music institute, you said? Like if you
uh,
take that, these are maybe drastic comparisons, but I'm wondering that I'm sure probably like things that you can mention.
I think the main thing is how uh, now that they focus on the DJ. Like, I guess whereas the DJ was your focus as far as like what you wanted to follow and go here, but I don't think like back then we went to the club to see him. You know, I didn't go there to see what Junior Vasquez was doing. I was going there just to hear what he was playing. You know, if I did see him, so be it. But you know, I don't remember being like, you know, just like what is he up there doing? You know, like so. I think that's the number one issue, that because it doesn't leave the room for the DJ to just do his job, which is to play music. You kind of now got to feel like, yeah, people are looking at you. You should, should I be dancing? Should I be, should I be interacting with them? And should they be hyping me up, or should I be hyping them up? Um, yeah, I feel like all that should be translated within the music. So I think that to me is probably the biggest cultural shift, outside of phones, of course, because because definitely, so like even at public records, which records are not. I mean, the phones are not like uh told not to have like an output. Like output is like no, no, but you can tell that most people don't. Just so I think just kind of having that culture of just like, put the phone away and be here in real time. Um,
Enjoy yourself.
enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's needed. But yeah, those are probably the definitely the biggest shift that I can say with the crowd in general. The fact of the focus on the DJ and carrying phones.
Um, I don't know why you were telling that. One thing I do remember, and it's not a question. I remember one of the the boiler room sets you did, and I think that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I think it was whatever a couple of years ago, and there was every time the camera pointed back at you, there was another girl right up on you and like trying to dance with you, and I think you were wearing a mask. Was it that one?
Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just know. I have to go back and watch it because it's the funniest thing ever.
I remember, so I played a few boiler rooms, but there were definitely two of them. And I think that one you're talking about is the Underground Black. And I think there was another one I did where it was in London. And I remember having to tell the girl, like, which I don't mind because I understand that the boiler room, it's meant to be that, where people are right behind you. So, I was cool with that, But and I remember in London, it was my records were like on the ground. They didn't have them like up, and the girls that were like right next to me, they had like drinks in their hands, and my records were there, and I was just like, I remember just stopping, like no one could hear me, but I was like, yo, if you drop fucking drinks on my records right here, I'm gonna fuck you up, and she was just like. and I just because they just kept getting closer and they were just you know drinks in hand, and it was just like blah blah, and I was like, yo, we need to make sure you. So again, you sign up for that when you go to boiler room. So for people to be upon you, but
Yeah.
again, I don't mind. Just give me room to actually do what I have to do. You know what I'm saying? I don't mind dance behind me, jump up and down, whatever you want to do. But just give me my elbow room, please.
Yeah, for sure. I just mentioned it because it was really every time you reminded me, and I had to mention it for sure. One thing I want to speak about because you celebrated 20 years last year was House in the Park. So
House in the Park.
congratulations on
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
For the people who don't know about House in the Park, which at this point is a major festival week, even at that point,
weekend,
in
yes.
Atlanta, can you tell me how this came about?
So Ramon, I was playing MJQ at the time. Ramon being the supporter, he was like, I want to do something outside. Will you be down? Yeah, no problem. Let's do it. And so the very first one, we were at some park, Candler Park. I mean, we had to rent like a generator, porta potties, and we might have got like 100, maybe 200 people out that time, the first time, and it was like, all right, cool, this is cool. And went to another park called Perkinson Park next, and we probably stayed there for about 5 years, or maybe 6, 7 years actually. We stayed at Perkinson Park, and every year it doubled whatever number it was. So the next year was 400. Then the following year was 800. The following year was like 16, maybe 2,000. The following year was like 4,000. It literally doubled like that.
That's crazy.
Yes, until we got to about 8,000 people, and it slowed down, and then we maybe got hit about 10 by the time we were like at number 10, and yeah, ever since then, it's just kind of slowly creeped to now. I say we're roughly between 15 and 20,000 people that come, and like yeah, it's been truly yeah amazing. And shouts out to Ramon, like because he really takes care of all the technical parts of it, you know, because initially the first couple of years, or you know, I would always just make sure the sound was there. I was more the sound guy, but he was the guy who would go get the permits and go talk to the city people.
Shout out to Ramon.
Shout out to Ramon, yes. And now, I mean, like one of the first ladies who she was just a cop, you know, that was I don't think she was even a lieutenant. Now she's the chief police in Atlanta. So you know, being the fact that we've done it for so many years now, and they know what we are, who we are, and what we're bringing. So things run a lot smoother. You know, we don't have we never have fights or crime. So like yeah, they're totally with it. You know, so um, it's just becoming really an amazing event. Like you know now they're people who had their kids were babies then they're now adults. You know. Uh, it's luckily been able to still keep that family orientated kind of feel as well as enjoying the music. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing. It was an amazing time when I went.
okay.
It's great.
Last year was your first year.
2 years
2 years. Okay,
ago, I
okay,
think.
2 years.
Yeah. So yeah, congratulations. It was. I've
Okay.
always heard, but once I actually got to witness it myself, I was like, oh wow, okay, that's amazing. So congratulations.
Yes.
And you do like now. It's like even before the main event, you guys have different parties on different days. And
Yeah. So I say maybe around probably the 8th or 10th one. Salah, who was also on the four of us. So that was also the next thing that we. So I think maybe like around number three, another person we won't mention. We invited a DJ because we were like, well, let's always have a guest, you know. And we invited this one guest DJ, and he didn't show up. And uh, the day still went well. Like you know, we still had great numbers in the whole 9 yards. So at that time, we made a pact between us four. We're like, we're never gonna have a guest. We're gonna always. So if we throw parties, after parties, whatever, we'll have a guest. But at the park itself, house in the park, it will always just be us four. Um, so Salah was one of the four. So it's me, Kemet, DJ Salah, and Kim Ramon. Salah thought about it and was like, "Yo, let's kind of have like a weekender." And so we'll start. Basic starts Thursday, and go till really Monday. And all the parties now, people can buy like kind of one ticket, and they can go to all the parties. And so I throw a party. Salah throws a party. Kim throws a party. There are other parties by some other promoters sometimes during that weekend, and they get included into the package. They do a Prince party, you know, that starts off the weekend. Um, yeah, and so like it was just because people were coming for the weekend, so we wanted more things for them to do, and yeah, and here we are. So like, so yeah, the Atlanta Weekender is the kind of overshadow, or House in the Park is the main event, and then Atlanta Weekend kind of like takes over for the weekend or upcoming.
I know those tickets, the whole weekend tickets, they
Yes,
always sell out pretty
they
quickly,
do.
and it includes, I think, House in the
They
Park
do.
for that.
I think the VIP tickets if you buy with the Atlanta Weekend, it will get you into House in the Park as well.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, if you do decide to go, cop the whole ticket.
Top It'll save you trouble. Yes.
Yeah. Besides House in the Park, how do you see today's like underground house music scene in Atlanta? I also saw that I think you have your hands in like a new venue down there as
So
well.
me, Kemet, Salah,
Okay.
and Mike
The whole
Zarin
crew.
are helping curate this one's a smaller room. It's like a vinyl bar called Echo Room. So we kind of just curate and just make. We all play rotatingly on a Thursday, but Friday and Saturday we're pretty much the ones who say like, "Oh, let this person play or let this person." So we curate in that way, as well as me and Kim have also started playing at this other place called Block and Drum. So things are so since COVID, because like COVID kind of shut down all the kind of like house clubs that were going on or things that supported it. Things are just now, I think, coming back together where there's some venues that support the sound. Um, Echo Room being one, Block and Drum, and there are definitely some underground promoters around town. Not some soulful time, but they're more maybe with some minimal tech kind of stuff. So there's Alley Cat, there's just other promoters, Desires. There definitely all these, some other promoters that constantly have been throwing some parties in warehouses or wherever else. But now I found because now there's a place called Lunchbox, a place called Future. Um, even have this other promotion group that came from Houston called Move to Move. They throw a party there in Atlanta now. Um, so yeah, there's this just it's kind of restarting again. Definitely.
That's nice to hear. Nice to hear. Um, then going back to you making music, what are some? You were here. You played last night. With the Razor and Tape,
Yes, yes, yes.
label, and I know that there's a remix out from you. What are some of the other projects that you can share or want to share that you have coming out or that you put out very recently that people might have missed?
So my own projects, I guess, or remixes, should I say? One I'm really looking at, which I played the other night, was the remix of Moody Man and Louis Vegas 7 Mile.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Looking forward to seeing that. The Razor and Tape one, which is out now, of Diogo Strauss, of a classic traditional Latin song. Who else? I just did a remix for a girl named Stacey Epps, she had like a brief stint like rapper in the mid '90s or maybe even early 2000s. But she's kind of like dipping her foot back into production or rapping again. So she has this kind of R&B song, and I just did a remix on that. Who else? Got a Donnie project I'm trying to help him put together again. I think that's it right now. Yeah.
And from your label that are not maybe not your productions, but they're on your label. Are there any?
We just released a Nico Las on my label on NDATL. I actually just started or starting right now, a sub label called Nutria, which the first single will be by Shaka, featuring a girl named Eve with a remix by Vic Lavender. So I got like.
Wait, when you say Shaka, what are we talking about?
Shaka that's his name. He's a DJ.
Oh, okay. I was about to say Shaka who?
Yeah. I wish I had Shaka Khan. Yeah, right. No, this guy named Shaka. So that's coming now. On NDATL, I have records from Ben Hickson coming. I have a collab that I did with Hannah that will come out. Who else? Reggie Dokes.
You stay busy.
Yeah, the music keeps me busy, definitely. Some music by a guy named Marcelo Cruz with Jadine Veda. Yeah, so there's a lot of music coming.
That's dope. I'm looking forward to it. I went to your website yesterday and then I looked at the releases. I was like, wow, I guess if I really look at it, your releases, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, but I've really realized if I would need to play a medley, in the ATL medley, I could do that because I have pretty much every single release except a few. Obviously, can't have it. Of course, speaks for your music, Right, so yeah, I'm looking forward to adding on to my collection.
There it is.
Yeah.
Also, we have the Cayenne project that's out now, which we kind of did the album on some years ago. Like that was one of those things that like things were finished, some things weren't finished. It kind of sat on the back burner for a little while. I finally got it done and finished it last year, and now we're working on I've had like a kind of like a line of remixes. Jimster did the first one. Mark Francis did second. Now we have one that's out right now with DJ Spin. Next one will be Ed 9, and after Ed 9, a Soul Freaka and Abacus. Soul Freaka, I played his remix last night.
Okay. One quick thing I also want to mention, since it's April, Movement Week in Detroit is coming up, and you have your party, Deep Detroit,
yes,
which has been mentioned also by a couple of people on this podcast that as I guess their memorable experience.
Oh, wow.
Or I can't remember the exact question that I asked, but some, in the line of like what a perfect party would look like, or like what a perfect dance floor would look like, and your party has been mentioned. What that's also been running for a while now,
15
right?
years. So this will be the 15th year.
15.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
How do you yeah, what is I'm sure it's not just, oh yeah, I'm gonna throw a party. Like there's a bigger thought behind it.
Okay. So the first one actually was supposed to be sort of like a Music Institute reunion party. And we were trying to do it funny at a friend's loft. And I remember we put the flyer out, and of course he didn't tell his landlord or whatever, and so the landlord ended up like just putting a note in everybody's door saying, "I don't know whose party this is, but whoever throws this party, you will be put out. You know, if you
Oh
do it."
damn.
So we're like rushing, like I'm like, where am I going to do this party? Because now it's already out. Andreas was going to play, and Derek May hooked me up with the guy who owned 1515, Chris. He's no longer here with us, and it was a great reunion, you know, because Chris didn't let anyone throw parties there prior to that. So yeah, we did there for, I think I was there for the first 10 years of it, was at there. And you know, the thought behind it was, again, the first one was just for the music. Is when it got to the second one, or you know, because I ended up having an Andreas remix that was coming out at the time of the party, so we sold it at the party, and I was like, okay, that works. I was like, so maybe I need to have a record at every party, you know. So the second one was Theo Parrish and Larry Heard, which was a great crazy party, um, and you know, from that point on, it just I always wanted to keep somebody classic, you know, maybe from Detroit, and then somebody young from Detroit. So that was usually the formula that moving forward. So I think I had Omar S, and I think Brett Dancer. Who did we do after that?
15 years, that's a lot of lineups.
Yeah. But yeah, so the, you know, one was Huckabee and Jay Daniel. Did one with Norm Talley, Kyle Hall, Juan Atkins, Stefan Ringer. Oh, Marcellus Pittman, Spectre was one. Uh, Shay Damier and Alton Miller was another. Uh, then, yeah.
Don't
So
have to remember all of them.
yeah. So I always, you know, I always try to keep, you know, again, somebody new and somebody old, and then people who are producing, because we want to have, you know, for the 12 inch. So usually it's always some production by the DJs on the 12 inch. So this year we have Glenn Underground, and we have the two young coming up and coming, Control Zora and Dion Jamar. So, and then we got a track from out of them. Actually got a special bonus remix from Tall Black Guy. So that'll be on the
Oh
special
wow.
edition.
And those records are always available at the party.
Always available at the party. Pretty much exclusively at the party. Usually we press anywhere between 300 or 400. We usually sell about 100 at the party. I usually give 100 to the artists themselves, and the other 200 just sell to the distributors or wherever else, or even on the website.
On the store. Okay, I'm looking forward to the one this year. Um, I'm almost at the end of my questions,
That's
but
it.
one steady question, if maybe you can answer,
Yes.
is I always ask every guest if they can name me 3 tracks that remind them or to a dancing moment, whether that is you on the dance floor or you playing the track for other people.
Ooh, let's see. First one I can remember is "Sounds of Blackness," Frankie Knuckles, "The Pressure," because I remember me and Shay came for, because then it was a new music seminar around that time, and I could just remember the whole week. It was just this. Frankie Knuckles did this remix on "Sounds of Blackness." You know, it's supposedly crazy. You know, just the buzz about it. You know, he's gonna play at Sound Factory Saturday. You know, so everybody was just there. You know, and yeah, it was truly kind of amazing. Like, you know, it starts with the piano, you know, track goes, and I just remember being on that dance floor like, am I about to faint? Like, what is going on here? Like, I'm jumping, I'm just like, this is amazing, you know. That's definitely a moment that I always remember. Um, now, I can't say if the track sticks with me as much as the moment. And I remember playing this track called "The Light." I think maybe Ralph Gum maybe did it with Ursula Rucker, and this is maybe my first time playing at Panorama Bar, maybe like 2013, and I had not been there before. It was my first time, and I'm playing. Yeah, and I play the song. And, it's like 7, 8 in the morning. Like it's like, and here comes the light, or something. And they open the
Oh
shades,
shit.
and when I tell you the people in there went fucking insane, like they're beating on things, they're beating on it. Like it was like, and I didn't know that the shades open because it's been pitch black in there all night, and all of a sudden they like the things open, and I'm like, oh, I was like they do that. I was like, yeah, it was so funny. So I'll always remember that one. Um, Third one. Hmm. Maybe something at Winter Music Conference. Maybe I'd have to think about the third one.
That's okay. That's okay. You can tell me whenever you
Yeah.
think of it. My last question. Okay, oh, maybe not my last. Maybe I'll have to ask a separate one.
Part A, part B.
Yeah, well, they're not really related, but I was just, since you're wearing another pair, and I'm almost legally blind, I have to say it.
I've been told I can see the future with my lens, so it's cool.
I can't. I can. I'm nearsighted. I definitely can't see the future. But how is your line of frames of your glasses? How?
They're doing well.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I started that in 2020. Like it was one of those things like people have been kind of like because I always wear glasses because I wear glasses. I always had different pairs of glasses all the time. So everywhere I would go, people would be like, "Guys, some dope glasses, man. You should do your own eyewear." And I always be like, "Oh man, it just seems so kind of like out of touch, out of reach." And eventually, I did start like there were definitely times prior to 2020 where I might have started to investigate and just didn't do it. And then when 2020 hit and COVID hit, I was like, no better time than now because like I'm not DJing. And it was definitely a gamble because kind of had to empty out my bank account to make it happen. But the support was there, and people really seemed to enjoy what I've put out, and here we are now. I think once I started with 2 frames, now I have 6.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, so and I'm just trying to continue that. Um, keep playing the music, give you some glasses to see.
To see the music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you put them like? Do you sell them on your own, just the frames, or do you put them in the? I don't even like
Optical
the
stores.
stores. Optical stores.
I have
Yes.
not been in optical stores yet, because I think that like how music was back in the day, you have to kind of go through a distributor, and I haven't quite done all the. And, now, definitely, I could probably go into an optical store and sell them there, but I didn't want to start doing that until I had more models. So I think now I'm about to start trying to actively get into more optical stores, so that people can actually also try them on and whatnot. Because when you buy them online, you never know how they fit.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if I wanted a pair. Like, what do you need to know certain things about, like your nose and where it sits. Like, what are those things
So I tell
called?
people, yeah. So I always tell people the easiest way when they ask me about that is just the glasses that you do have. All glasses have a measurement on the inside. So if you look at that measurement on the inside and then compare it to the measurement of the glasses that you're buying, will give you an idea of whether or not they'll fit your face or how they'll fit. I definitely, I give a like 30-day whatever. So if you get them, you don't like them, you can send them back.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then my last question is just more of like if there's anything else you would like to share. I know we can talk all day long, but that's gonna exceed the time.
They're not gonna watch YouTube all day,
and
right?
the SD card. But anything that you current that you want to get off your chest, or there's something that I haven't spoken about or spoken enough?
Nope, I don't think that no one's catching my eye right now. I have to be looking at the camera and telling us no. Yeah, just I thank everyone for the support. Thank you for the support. Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you for being here.
Yeah, no, just again, just always grateful to still be able to do what I do, and that people are receptive to it. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much, Kai,
No,
for
thank you,
coming
man.
and taking your time.
No
and
problem.
thank you. I look forward to your next party.
Yes.
I'll be on the dance floor.
All
Yeah.
right. You'll be in Detroit this year?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, I'll be there.
All right.
See you soon. Thank you everyone for listening and watching, subscribing, do all the things.
Do all the things.
Thank you. Yeah, do all the things what you need to do with a podcast. I know you can find it wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Yes. I
Thank
keep
you.
it easy myself. I'm just Kai Alcé everywhere.
Yeah.
I got no like handle names,
It's
just Kai Alcé.
But and your label has a separate one, right?
Yes, which is just indieatl.com is just the website. But I don't have like an indieatl Instagram or
okay, that was
that
my
kind of
fault.
stuff. I just kind of just promote through Kai Alcé. But Kai Alcé Eyewear does have its own.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Kai Alcé. I just assumed everybody knows Kai, so I wasn't even thinking that. My apologies. But you definitely type in Kai Alcé on Google and you find everything you need to know.
Yes. Yeah. Look up. My parents were smart and gave me a name that not many people have. I don't think I've actually ran into another Kai Alcé.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, now that see, side note. You're what do you call it? AKA like Kai Alcé, there's the Kaiser. Is that how I pronounce it correctly?
So my name is just Kai. Kaiser was just something that people kind of like.
They called you out of nowhere. They just called you that.
Yeah, because you remember the movie Usual Suspects. There was the guy in there called Kaiser Soze in the movie.
Oh, okay.
So I forgot who. Maybe it was a girlfriend or something like that. It was like Kaiser, and like it stuck.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know if you're aware of that, but Kaiser in German, it's spelled differently, but it means emperor. Oh. So you're the house music emperor. That's what I'm gonna call you.
All right, I'm gonna use that.
Yeah. Thank you again, Kai. Appreciate your time and coming. Thank you.
All right.